Hey everyone. Today I'm going to be looking into the Sacramento Kings, kind of reviewing their off season, and then kind of looking into just what's their future and what's the upside for them moving forward because I think they're the team with the longest playoff drought. Haven't made the playoffs in over 14 years. Just pretty disappointing in itself, but just furthermore, I just don't know what the ceiling is for this team right now. They gave De'Aaron Fox the extension, which at the right now it doesn't seem like it's fully there. I mean, let's give some examples. Like Donovan Mitchell's proved for the past 3 seasons he's deserving of it. I mean, I'm not saying De'Aaron's bad. He's actually been more consistent than Bam Adebayo has been, and that's probably a big part to play with De'Aaron's current situation playing in Sacramento. But he hasn't necessarily been an all-star, nor I don't think he's been an All-NBA player yet. He has that potential. Yes, he does have that potential, but we haven't seen that yet. And I think he's borderline. He's just in the Western Conference on a really one of the smaller markets. So I was going to look into a couple of their plans and options moving forward, but I'll get into it towards the end. I'm just going to kind of look into what the preview and what the idea was. The first thing was what they were going to do with Bogdanovich, and we saw that they didn't match the offer that was placed onto him, and that was probably a smarter move for the future. Their salary cap situation is pretty tight right now, with Harrison Barnes making an excessive amount of money, Buddy Hield making a good number of money, and in another year, De'Aaron Fox making max money. So a big thing was this offseason was our Buddy Hield's days in Sacramento over because with in the second half of the season, their lineup was mainly, without Bagley, they would run like Alex Len, maybe not even De'Aaron Fox. You'd have Corey Joseph out there, but you would have Bogdanovich out in the starting lineup. You would have maybe Harrison Barnes, but you just didn't have. But they had Buddy Hield off the bench, and it was just kind of creating a speculation around his future. And so, what I was thinking, this was when you had Vlade Divac, and he did promise he stepped down, which is good because people realize this. The big thing is what he promised is he said if things weren't going well, he would step down. I think the only good thing he's done so far for sure is drafting De'Aaron Fox if he was a part of that process. Marvin Bagley would be a close second if he can show this season that he's not like a complete injury prone player. He only played 13 games last year, so if he could come out next season and at least play to what he's been playing at, which is like 14 points per game, about 7 rebounds. But if he can take a step in the right direction, I think that's the second best move. But then there's also the thing about, so Hield and Barnes are the most logical candidates to move, but they're not going to move either of them because it's going to be hard to move that Barnes contract. And then just in moving forward, we just didn't exactly know what the idea was. But when we also think about it, another thing to just kind of keep in consideration was De'Aaron Fox going to get the max extension? That was a big question upon the NBA world. I personally didn't think he was going to get it yet. I think there was going to be more of a BI situation where they wanted to see another year of it. But contrary to BI situation where it was the Pelicans and he had not shown his potential yet, the Kings know his potential. And honestly, the Kings didn't really have a choice. It was like the Bam Adebayo situation where you really didn't have a choice. You want to keep the guy. You want to show him that he's a part of your long-term future. So that's a good thing is that they have their young, promising guy for the next 6 years. So just kind of look, just the big thing about De'Aaron's game, that kind of got me questioning it is he averaged 21.1 points per game, 48% from the field. He hasn't been historically a very good an effective 3-point percentage scorer. His best season was last year with 37%, but that was on 2.9 attempts, and he played 81 games, so that was a pretty solid season there, or at least okay. But last year he took a big dip in the games he played and only averaged 29% from the three, so it definitely wasn't one of his better seasons. We saw a dip in his shot making ability. So I think for NBA fans, when you look at De'Aaron Fox, you definitely want to hope that, if you're a Sacramento Kings fan, you really want to hope that his jump shooting gets better. He was a fair playmaker. He's averaging around 7 assists a game, which is pretty good. I think he can improve that a little bit. He's a very, he's one of the quickest guys in the league, probably next to Westbrook there. Yeah, when we look at De'Aaron Fox's game, it's really impressive. He's got some issues in the defensive end, although that's something he's also looking to improve this season. So that's something to look forward to for Kings fans as well. Um, and then there's obviously some perks to De'Aaron's deal depending on what occurs. But basically, I'm just gonna now look into their off. Like those were the ideas for this offseason. So we know that Bogdanovich left. We know that De'Aaron Fox did get the extension because the Kings wanted to secure their guy for the next 6 years, and they did that. He signed for about 5 years, $163 million. Now the question is, what do you do with the rest of the team? You have Harrison Barnes, who's kind of a questionable contract. You did bring in two good center signings, I believe. You brought Hassan Whiteside in on a fairly reasonable deal, and then you brought Frank Kaminsky in. So the Kings definitely made some good signings there. Frank Kaminsky can stretch the floor when he's coming off the bench. And you also have Hassan Whiteside, which is one of the centers who's been a little bit more in debate, question in the past couple of years, especially when he got that big time deal. That at the time it actually looked pretty impressive, but nowadays it just looked like an extreme overpay for that kind of center because the game's just evolving. And they also had the 12th pick in the draft this year, and they were pretty fortunate to get Tyrese Halliburton at that position. I think they definitely wanted to get that backup or potential guy who could slide at the 3 with De'Aaron Fox for this Kings team, and now you got that and Tyrese Halliburton. You got a nice 6'5" point guard he's a fairly okay shooter. Wasn't like killing it like that much at Iowa State in terms of like that kind of game. He's a very good playmaker, an okay defender. You definitely could ride him at the 3 next to Buddy and De'Aaron. I think there's some good good lineup options there, but the issue with this season is there's like 11 teams. There's about 12 to 13 teams in the Western Conference that are looking to make it to the playoffs. It means that some teams are going to be underachieving and they're not going to be doing as well as they should or as well as they expect. So that and one of those teams, and one of the very few teams that are, one team that the NBA world knows is not going to make the playoffs. They're tanking, or they're clearly looking to go get that number 1 pick is the OKC Thunder. But alongside that, the Sacramento Kings are kind of put in that conversation, which is something interesting to look forward to. And so some plans that are like for them moving forward possibly is, growing their current core and hoping Marvin Bagley gets better. He's going to be a big key to what happens in the future for this team. So that's the most likely option right now because you got De'Aaron for 6 years. Hopefully they can somehow spark some playoff spot. I don't see it happening this year unless COVID-19 cases really impact the team or injuries, and the Kings really just see improvement from De'Aaron Fox. You see Marvin Bagley really coming into form and not getting injured all the time, and Tyrese Halliburton and Buddy Hield really work in this Kings offense. It really kind of comes down to the coaching there too. Another thing is to kind of what they did with Trae Young in Atlanta is to trade for assets and free agency signings next year to win now. I don't know if that's the likely option. I mean, I don't know if I want to say that De'Aaron Fox is better than Trae Young, but I don't think I want to say the other either because that was Trae's first really good season. I mean, he was an all-star, really good NBA player that season. And then the last one, which is kind of just unlikely, would just be to not really rebuild, but just kind of like just reconstruct this team, try to build up the youth with De'Aaron Fox. De'Aaron's still relatively young, only in his 3rd season, about 21, 22 years old. So those are some things I think the Kings could look forward to. I still think they're in a little bit of a questionable spot in terms of what's going to happen moving forward with some of their long-term contracts. But hopefully Marvin Bagley can really can come back from his injury. Praying for that man. And yeah, that's going to be it. So if you enjoyed, feel free to like, subscribe, comment down below. Make sure to click the bell so you never miss a video. And I'm out.